we go. You're about to listen to Speak Up, Show Up, Lead, the podcast, where we speak our truth, show up anyway, and lead from the front. Follow me. Let's go. Follow me. Let's go. I love that. I'm never going to get rid of that. Anyway, this is JJ Hardy and Chris. We're doing a Speak Up, Show Up, Lead episode of Leadership Live today. And today we're talking about how it's important not to lose yourself in your role. Mm-hmm. And this is going to be an interesting conversation. Before we get started, I'm going to do a plug-in for my book, Speak Up, Show Up, Lead. It's my story, leadership lessons through poverty, joining the military, and then everything that I've done afterwards. If that's something that interests you, check it out on Amazon.com. Speak Up, Show Up, Lead. Chris, how you doing today, buddy?
Doing great, JJ. How are you?
You know, life is good. You know, we had Thanksgiving, so the kids spent a little extra time home, and now they're back to the grind, and so am I, and that's kind of nice too. But you know, everything's going well. What about you?
Same here. House full of people for Thanksgiving, and you know, my son was home from school, so he's back now. But now we're just in the final kind of tailwinds of 2025, heading into the holidays, and bringing in the year strong.
Yeah. Well, you know, I always enjoy. I'm one of those nerds that enjoys the holiday music, and so I really do like this time of year. Oh, you do? Yeah. I'm in good company. Okay, nothing to be embarrassed about here, but yeah. So I'm excited for all of it. Anyway, so let's talk about that: losing yourself in your role, balancing influence and identity. And you know, we've gone over some of this stuff, but this is kind of like bringing everything together. Mm-hmm. So, you know, what's your take on that, Chris?
Yeah, my take here is you can't lose what you are, right? You can't lose your individual personality, your traits, whatever, just to kind of fit into a culture or what you think that culture means. So, you know, a great example, right? For this time of the year, I also like Christmas music, but I like maybe your non-traditional Christmas music, right? If you walk into my office, you're hearing an AC/DC Christmas song, or you're hearing some kind of rock and roll, or even, you know, like Run DMC's Christmas. So, and people have commented on that. Like, I play some music in my office and they come in and they're like, is that Christmas music? I'm like, this dude's singing about Santa Claus. Of course it is. It's just heavy metal.
It is heavy metal, right?
But that's my personality. So it's important to keep yourself who you are and not try to change just because that's what you think, or, you know, you can't lose your own identity to blend in, because what makes you unique is also one of your leadership strengths.
It's true. And, you know, I do think that there is kind of a professional persona that everybody has to develop as well, because if you're that, well, it depends on the industry, obviously, but if you're that foul-mouthed, rough around the edges type of a person, and then you start going into a management role, supervisor, whatever the case may be, well, you could be very off-putting. And, you know, that's not a bad thing when you're talking to people outside of work. But when you're talking to people in work, if you want to create that influence that we're talking about, sometimes you just got to, you know, tone it down a little bit. It's you're not losing yourself, but what you're doing is you're creating this professional persona that everybody else can, I don't want to say deal with. I don't really know of another way to say it, but you know, you don't want people to feel uncomfortable being around you or talking to you or stuff like that, because if issues need to get solved and you're that person that's this roughneck that just spouts off at the mouth all the time and doesn't watch his language, doesn't really watch any of that stuff, then you're only going to have a certain number of people in your audience talking to you at all, and that's not what you want. You want at work, when you're developing a social media persona, that's different. But when you're at work, you want your employees to be able to trust and be able to come to you.
Yeah, I mean, time and place for everything. And yeah, when you're in a professional setting, it's about being situationally aware, right?
Yep.
So it's not that you necessarily have to change yourself, but okay, I'm sitting in a boardroom. I'm not going to be dropping F bombs, but maybe if I'm out on a construction site, different story depending on the situation.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, it's there's behavioral elements, there's situational elements, there's the company that you're in elements, and I'm not talking about the organization, but the people that you're in, let's say a meeting with or whatever. Um, you have to know how to act, right? But
Yep.
that acting a certain way doesn't mean that you have to throw your own personality out the window. You just can't be an idiot and act like you're standing on a street corner with your buds.
Yes, I agree. So let's break that down though. Let's just well let's do some definitions.
Yeah.
Influence. In my opinion, influence is the ability to make things happen with your people and for them to have that buy-in. That I mean, that's to me, that's the very basic of having influence, the buy-in. You're not laying down the hammer, and you can do that. Don't do it. You shouldn't, but you can't. But
Right.
but it's being able to get the buy-in of people so that they get the job done that they're prescribed to do. Identity.
Well, hang on
Well,
one
we
sec,
talked.
JJ.
Yeah.
I just want to expand on that influence piece for a second
Yes.
because we're talking about leadership here, but I want everyone to understand that your ability to influence others isn't necessarily tied to your title or your organizational authority, right? You have to be able to influence your peers. You've got to be able to influence up the chain. So your ability to influence really doesn't have anything to do with where you sit in the organization.
That's true.
That's an important piece to keep in mind because people will think that automatically, hey, I become a manager, a director, a vice president, C-suite person, so therefore I have influence. We've talked about this before. If your people don't trust you, if your people don't respect you, your influence is capped. So it's a broad spectrum for influence. So I didn't
Oh
mean to cut
yeah.
you off, but I just wanted
No,
to
no,
add
no.
that in.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I have my core things that I have in my company. I call it the voices framework.
Okay.
Leaders have vision, they take ownership, they have integrity, they communicate well, they have empathy for their people, and they have that servant leader mentality. And I kind of feel like that's in my opinion, based off of everything that I've learned in the military and what since I started operating in my business by myself, that the that's kind of a great way to look at how to create influence and how to be an excellent leader and be the person that you need to be for yourself and other people need you to be for them.
Yeah.
And if you can balance all of that, because it's a dichotomy, it's not it's a, honestly it's kind of a shit show. So I mean, if you try to you're constantly working on how to balance all of that stuff while maintaining who you are, but also making sure that you have this professional side of you, especially when you're at work, because you want to meet people where they are. You don't want to just be this arrogant jerk that says, no, I'm me. I'm me. You don't want to be that guy. Yeah, I've heard that before.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
me. Okay, I don't even know what that even means. Thank you for telling me that you are you. I don't
That's
think
right.
I'm looking at anybody else. But that you're right. You do have to have a professional persona. And
Mhm.
and if you don't, if you just the guy that you are when you're joking around, smoking and joking with your buddies all the time, or that guy you are when you're drinking, or whatever the case may be, that's not always the person that you want to be when it's time to get shit done.
Right.
When it's time to get shit done, you have to. Gosh, anyway, that's a whole call in itself. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you want to be who you are, but you gotta be able to lead others, and
Mhm.
you gotta be able to lead yourself, and so that's why leadership is a development thing. It's not something that's inherent. You have to learn how to do it.
That's right.
But and it's a whole bunch of balance. Now, identity, we've talked about that quite a bit in the past leadership lives that we've been doing, and I think that just comes down to that understanding of who you are. You know, the core values
Mhm.
that you feel are strong. Uh, Figuring out how you can put those core values to to use at work, and you know, not be too flagrant or too standoffish or whatever the case may be, because you know we all have a little bit of that, and there's some fear when it comes to dealing with other people, especially in a professional capacity, when it seems like everyone's at risk of losing their job or whatever the case may be. You want to be able to get stuff done. So that's kind of what we're dealing with here, as far as a definition for both of those things.
Yeah, I agree. And one doesn't, so they go hand in hand, but you don't have to lose one in order to gain the other, right? You
Nope.
can maintain your identity while at the same time having influence in different ways, right? Who you are as a person isn't going to, so your core values, let's go back to that, right? If one of your core values is trustworthiness,
Yep.
then your identity, your trustworthy self comes through in whatever situation you're in, right? You're in the boardroom, you're very proper, you're buttoned up, and you're using professional language, to being on the jujitsu mats, and I'm the biggest shit talker when I'm on the jujitsu mats because I'm with my friends, and and that's like the banter back and forth.
Yep.
But you can still trust me that I'm not going to pull that knee bar so hard that I'm going to injure you, right? I'm going to tease you. I'm going to sing song lyrics to you until you tap out, but I'm not going to tweak it so hard that I'm going to snap your ACL. So
Oh, you sing to your people on the mat, do you?
sometimes I do.
Very interesting. Well, and you know, let's go after you figure out who you are and all that other sort of stuff. There are some things, right, when it comes to losing yourself and losing your identity when you start leading others.
Mhm.
Oftentimes when people get promoted into a higher position of authority, even if they were already a leader at one point, at one level rather, when they get promoted higher and then higher and then higher, one thing that I see all the time, and we've discussed it before, is that ego starts to take over.
The magic
And
three-letter word.
oh gosh,
Mhm.
ego is a necessary thing, but if you let it get out of hand, you gotta smack it, a little bit and tell it to
Right.
back the hell off. But that ego, it can ruin your entire leadership experience. You'll lose the buy-in of your people, and it's because some people and sometimes it's out of fear, sometimes it's out of wanting to do the right thing, but they lose their sense of self, because they go from being that person who wants to do right by everybody to, this is the job that has to be done, you got to do it my way, you have to do it the boss's way, you have to blah blah, and they don't listen to anybody anymore. And so when it comes to, and they think that's what they need to be in that new role, and as I said, it's not because they're trying to necessarily do anything wrong. Sometimes it's out of fear, or wanting to do the right thing.
Mhm.
But you got to watch out for that,
Yeah.
because if you let your ego take over, then you're going to turn into, and I've seen people have it get worse and worse and worse and worse over the years, because nobody ever checked them on it, and kind of explained what they were doing or how to fix that.
Right.
But if you let it get out of control, it will completely take you over and get worse over time.
Yeah. It's the person who they allow their personal identity to be defined by their work identity, right? It's the person who constantly has to remind you what their title is when they make a request. Hey, I've asked you to do this. And by the way, this is my title in the organization. So therefore, you must listen to me. And most people, as soon as they start hearing that, they tune you out. Nope.
Mhm.
I know what your title is because it's in your freaking email address signature. I don't need to hear it from you 5 times a day.
Nope.
So I'm just going to tune you out. And your effectiveness, your influence over me dwindles every single time you mention your title.
Yep. Yep. That's completely true. And you got to be really careful when you're balancing that,
Mm-hmm.
because on the other side of that, if you overcorrect it, then you can be accused of a people pleaser. And you don't want to do that either, because you do want to listen to people. You do want to receive input, but at the end of the day, I mean, not calling yourself out all the time, that's one thing. But then when you go to the other side where you're just like, okay, we can do this. Okay, we can do that. You still have to be that resolute leader as well when it comes time, because everyone's going to have a different opinion, and you're not going to be able to make everyone happy all the time. So when one person says one thing and another person says another thing, and then another person says another thing, and you are just trying very hard to please everybody, you can lose yourself that way too,
Yeah, you could.
because you're constantly wanting to do right by everyone. But at the end of the day, man, you got to be a leader, and you got to take decisive action when there's you got to figure out what's the right thing to do for the overall organization, for the mission, and for the whole team. Because guess what? I hate to tell you, but you're going to make a decision, and you're going to tell everybody what's going on, and you're going to piss some people off. It's just kind of the way it goes.
It's called life.
It is life.
We're
Yeah.
not all
Yeah.
robots. Like,
We are not all robots. And by the way, no leader is perfect.
right.
So that's another thing.
That's right.
You just got to do the best you can. And there's nothing wrong with leading people down a path and then realizing it's wrong, making a course correction, owning up to the fact that, I'm sorry, I had you guys do this bunch of extra stuff, but I realized we're going down a path that's not going to benefit any of us. We got to course correct and do this, receive the input, make the overall correction, make another decision, and then take action on that. But there you don't want to just people please. That's
Right.
not going to get you anywhere. And sometimes, well, that's like the ego thing too. I mean, that can also take you over, and then you'll forever be known as a people pleaser, because that can get worse and worse and worse over time as well.
Yeah, it can. And I mean, some people, that is part of their identity. It's part of their personality to want
Yeah.
to please people. And you know what? That makes for a good servant leader, but you've got to watch it. Like, that's a slippery slope. Like, I for me, it's always about my team. How can other people be better? How can we move faster? What tools and resources does my team need? Right, that's part of my kind of servant leadership approach to things. But if you're inherently a people pleaser, you can fall down the wrong rabbit hole in the servant leadership mindset because you're constantly subordinating yourself in order to serve others. And dichotomy, right? Balance is what it all comes down to. Because otherwise,
Well,
you get walked all over, and then you get frustrated, and then you take it out in other areas, and it just turns into a whole bad situation all around.
and that's why leadership is a skill
Yeah,
to be learned, just like anything else. And that's why so many companies make the mistake, especially when they're smaller, but they still do it when they're bigger, of taking their high performers and putting them in a position because they did such a good job before.
yeah,
But then they're like, hey, here's your team, here's your new set of responsibilities. This is what I expect from you. This is the report, blah 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 blah, all the way down the line, and they forget to give them training on that new. Well, it's not that they forget; they don't even know they need to provide that training on that new skill,
exactly.
and it's so crucial. I'm not saying that everyone is going to fail if they don't learn, but that learning curve, when you do it as you go, my goodness, it is so much harder than if you just, gosh, companies waste millions and millions of dollars on not training their employees. And if they were to just solve it immediately and give them that foundation and things to think about as they right off the jump, it would make everyone's job so much easier, especially the type of leadership that you feel your organization needs.
Mhm.
Because when you have everyone on the same sheet of music, training, that's what it's all about. Training is about balancing your organization to the culture that you want. And if you don't do any training at all and you just let people kind of go, then they're all gonna balance all gonna balance what they think they need based off of what is working. And it's not going to be according to the organization or according to the values or anything like that. They're just going to be getting shit done the way they think they need to get shit done. So I mean, this is everything that we're talking about. If you're the opposite of what we're saying, or if you're suffering from any of these things, I mean, ego, it can take you over.
Mhm.
People pleasing, it can take you over. You do want to be a servant leader and listen to your people, but you don't want to go too far. It's all about balance. It's all about learning what it takes to create influence, because people have been studying this stuff for years. It's not rocket science and it's not new. People know how to create influence and create a company culture. But if you don't take decisive action and learn how to do it, you're going to struggle a lot more.
100%.
Yep.
Yep.
But yeah, gosh, I kind of went off on a tangent there. So what, in your opinion, Chris, what are some red flags when you start going too far on any of these things that you think that externally outside of yourself that you could that you would normally see, and when you're going too far, maybe you're people pleasing, or maybe your ego is getting out of control, or what are some of those things that you notice externally from other people
So are we saying red flags where you're seeing
when you
too much of
when you're losing your way?
right? Okay, so you're losing your identity, you're losing your way, you're kind of, are we going to say like towing the corporate line
Sure.
and losing yourself in that?
Yeah. For example, I mean, let's just say there was one time when I will just talk about the time when I got promoted to E5 when I was in the Army, because that was my first formal leadership position as a non-commissioned officer, a leader in the United States Army.
Inducted
Um,
into the E5 mafia.
I was inducted into I had and back then we had the collar with the rank on the collar here, and
Uh
I
huh.
I had somebody come up to me and go boom right on my collar. I got the blood rank. Oh, anyway, so I was inducted into the NCO. You're right. No, but when I I wanted to do the right thing. People already told me that I had a lot of leadership qualities, but I was kind of that quiet leader.
Mm-hmm.
And I was no longer quiet after I got promoted. Everyone came, my leaders started coming to me because things weren't happening the way that they wanted it to, blah, 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 which happens to everyone. So if you're hearing this, likely it's happened to you in the past, maybe not yelling, but that's the military way, not always. There's definitely that leadership style that's present everywhere over there. But, you know, so I started turning into that. And that wasn't who I was. I was
Mm-hmm.
loud, but I was also I didn't when I needed people to do things, I had this calm about myself, and it came back. But a couple of my friends, actually these were my friends, because when you get promoted and you're still in the same unit, you tend to have your friends working for you, which doesn't always work, but it can. Well, that's a whole other topic. We can talk about that sometime. But he walked up to me and he said, Sergeant Hardy, yeah, I have never seen you get out of control like this. And I said, and at the time, I did let my ego take control. I'm like, you know what? Well, this is what I got to do. This is my new job, blah, 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 this, that, and the other thing. And I kind of let him have it. And then I walked away and I was just thinking to myself, what a jerk.
Yeah. Yep.
What the hell did I just do? What have I been doing? That is not who I am. And just the person I was, I wasn't afraid to talk to anybody. I walked straight into my supervisor's office, and I talked to him. And I said, you know, you've been laying laying things down pretty hard on me lately, and so is the first sergeant. And I'm not upset by that, but I have noticed that I've been doing stuff like this. And he said, "Well, let's go into it." And we had a long, actually, he canceled a meeting because he wanted to have a long conversation with me about that because it's a normal thing.
Mhm.
And so, two things there. A, when somebody brings it to your attention, you got to have that self reflection and don't let that ego continue to get in the way.
Absolutely.
And
Yep.
I did go back to that person, by the way, and apologize. And I brought my whole team together and said, I know you guys worked with me before I got promoted, and I haven't been myself lately. But let's make some new things happen. Let's make things happen the way it was before. The
Mhm.
difference is now I'm a part of the team in a new capacity. But but don't just do it alone. Know that either whether it's your supervisor or maybe it's another fellow leader at work or whatever the case may be, my goodness, go talk to somebody and get some guidance on how to course correct what's going on. I mean, we don't always just lead people down the wrong path, rather. We sometimes we lead ourselves down the wrong path. And
Yep.
that's what this whole uh live stream today is really about. It's understanding who who you are as a leader, and making things happen with other people because you don't have influence over you know the grass or anything like that. So I mean, we you influence others, and the only way to do that is to be genuine, to be who you are, and to not let ego get out of control, and to not let um, not be a people pleaser, to not let a bunch of external factors change everything that you do. You got to be that resolute leader that serves others and understands that you got to find that balance so you don't lose yourself and you don't lose your influence over others and all that other stuff.
Yep.
And sometimes that's through going through other people. Do you have an experience
Yep.
like that to share?
So yeah, I do. Um, and I was going to say that I'll share some red flags as well, so that
Sure. Yes,
people can
please.
have some takeaways. But yeah, I do remember early in my career. I think you and I have talked about this actually. Um, Early in my career, I was in a corporate culture that was just like cutthroat, and one of my jobs, I had to do turnaround work, and man, I don't know what's in my eye, but I'll push through. Um, but I was written up because I wasn't hard enough while letting someone go. Like
Mm,
they wanted the executioner, and that's just not my personality. But because I didn't follow their protocol of like ice in your veins, sharp axe, chop it, make the person, they wanted you to make the person leave with their tails tucked between their legs. And that is just not the way to do it.
no.
So I got written up for it, for not being, in line. Um, and then what that caused me to do was my pendulum shifted and I started being more hard ass. And then I start to realize like, man, something is off about me, right? I'm not happy with myself. I'm not happy, leaving the office or driving home. I'm getting home and I'm short with my kids and my wife. So when you feel like you're not acting like yourself outside of work, that could be a red flag for you to
Mm,
do some reflection of like, oh, has my behavior changed while I'm at work? And if so, what has changed about it? Because I'm feeling out of sorts, and maybe that's the root cause. And in my case, it was right for that situation. So the red flags of, am I feeling like myself? Right. When you get promoted and you're now in a new role, new management level role, you should be happy and excited. And that should last for a certain period of time, right? But if you get promoted and then a month into it, you're like, dude, I wake up miserable. I leave work miserable. I always feel like there's a chip on my shoulder or I'm feeling anxious. Those are probably signs and red flags that you should be doing some reflection and saying, am I losing myself in this role? Have I totally shifted the way that I perform, act, treat people because I just got this promotion?
Yeah.
Do I need to pull it back? Not pull the promotion back, but pull back, the kind of the cover and see what's under the hood and say, oh, yeah, you know what? I had a different perception of what this role is supposed to be. And I allowed myself to slip into it, and I need to get back to being me. So if you're not feeling like yourself, think
That's a good
about it
sign.
and reflect on the past couple of days at work and like, okay, was I being a jerk? Like, be open minded and honest with yourself. And I would say most times that's going to be your root cause.
Yeah, I agree. Wow. Well, I mean, at the bottom line is leadership is about balance.
Mm-hmm.
Being who you are and losing that sense of identity, especially brand new managers or something like that, uh, it's common.
Yep.
Give yourself a little bit of grace and just know that you have some work to do. I mean, we all do when we're young leaders, especially organizational leaders,
Yeah.
because there's just things to learn. You don't know everything. If you think you do, then smack yourself in the face and think about it again. But at the
I've
end
been
of the
in this
day,
game for a while. I still don't know everything.
hell no, man. Especially when I talk to my wife, I think I learn very quickly that I'm lost in the sauce. but you know, but give yourself some grace, especially at work, because if you don't continue learning, especially about your new role, and by the way, that's not just brand new leaders. Every time you go up to a higher level position, there's stuff to learn about organizational leadership. There are different approaches to take when you're leading another manager rather than just leading a frontline employee. And
Yep.
when you're leading senior people, there's a different approach to take to that too. So just know that no matter where you're at in your leadership journey, you need to give yourself grace. You need to understand that it's okay to make mistakes and giving your employees the ability to make mistakes. This is a learning process. You
Absolutely.
do you have any closing comments before we jump ship on here?
I guess the biggest closing comment that I have is pay attention to yourself, right? And not always in the moment, but later on, right? Just always do that check. Check in with yourself during your reflection, whether it's the end of the day or the beginning of the day, and yeah, see if you're still on track.
Yeah, yeah. One thing that everybody can do if you're struggling with this, you can go back to some of our past videos. So if you go to
Mhm.
my channel, Speak Up, Show Up, Lead, we've done talks on how to figure out your identity, understand your core values. But this going too far in one direction or the other, you can listen to some of the stuff on emotional intelligence, EQ.
Mhm.
That this is being able to understand who you are, how you react, and all that other stuff. It's there's a lot to think about there, and there are other resources outside of my page, but there are definitely plenty of resources there as well. I even have talks on there with my buddy Derek, uh, who deals with behavioral health. So I mean,
Right.
there are a lot of good conversations on there, and just work on yourself and give yourself grace. Thank you, Chris. What an awesome
Thanks, JJ.
conversation
It
today.
was a
I
good
think
one.
it went well.
Me too.
And the next call we are going to be doing. We were just talking about it.
December 20th.
We're going to
It'll
be
be our
doing it
last
on.
show of the year, JJ.
Oh my gosh! Yep. And we have the next one. Oh gosh, it's the last one of this series,
Yep.
and so we're going to have to do some work. I'll probably end up doing a post on what we're going to be talking about after the new year, but uh, reclaiming you, what to do when you realize you've drifted. So stay tuned if you're one of those people that are having a hard time with this stuff,
That's right.
because we're going to talk about how to handle some of that stuff. And I have a feeling we'll probably get a little bit into emotional intelligence on that call because that's part of it. So, yeah, thank you, Chris. And again, don't forget, all of you people out there in the audience, don't forget to buy Speak Up, Show Up, Lead. My story of leadership lessons I've learned throughout my life. And check if you want to do a leadership workshop for your organization on any of the things that we discuss. I have a whole series of them. Reach out to me and I can hook you up. I
Awesome.
got you. Thank you, Chris. And don't forget to like, subscribe, not Chris, but everybody else. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and all the things on my channel. Everybody have a great weekend.
Thanks, JJ. Everyone have a great day. See ya.